Welcome to Accountable, where your business is our business. Hosted by David R. Peters. Today's guest is Lindsay Andiola.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Accountable, the podcast for CFOs by a CFO. My name's David Peters. Welcome to our show today. I have to tell you that this is a subject that is near and dear to a lot of practitioners' hearts. And I know that to be true because when I'm out and I'm talking with folks at conferences and things like that, this is something that we talk about a lot. The preparation that goes into bringing folks out of universities and colleges and into the accounting profession, helping folks make that transition from college to the working world. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about that process and how is it that that process has changed over time. One of the things that I think that we have heard a lot in the accounting profession, especially in more recent years, is that the role of the accountant is widening. It's changing. It's not just debits on the left, credits on the right, if it ever really was that. And so I think when we hear that, what people really mean is they mean that the profession and what is expected of accountants has evolved. It's changed. It's turned into something different. It continues to move as business needs change. And I think one of the interesting challenges in that is for the professors, the teachers that are in universities and colleges right now that are trying to prepare students to step into the working world. I think that that's a hard thing for them to keep up with. It's is this process of sort of the evolving profession and the evolving role of the accountant. Well, today my guest is Lindsay Andiola. Lindsay is an accounting professor at VCU. She's an assistant professor at VCU. She teaches undergraduate auditing. She also is in the doctoral audit seminar as well. So she teaches a wide range of courses. She's also been a practitioner. She is somebody who worked for KPMG's assurance practice in DC and New York, and she spent several years in corporate accounting as well. One of the other things that she does at VCU is she is on a committee that helps with incorporating data analytics and technology into the curriculum at VCU so that their students can be well prepared for some of these changes, some of these evolutions that are happening in the accounting profession right now. I think that we all know that technology has become a bigger part of the accountant's life. I mean, whether you're in auditing or corporate accounting, it doesn't really matter. I mean, technology is a bigger part of our lives now. Data analytics is a bigger part of our lives now, too. And one of the things that Lindsay does is she helps incorporate those aspects of the accounting profession purposely into their curriculum. So it's a very purposeful effort to sort of incorporate those elements because they know that that's important. So I think it's going to be a great conversation today because we get a chance to talk about how colleges and universities are really adapting to the changing needs of the profession. So enjoy my conversation today with Lindsay Andiola. This week on Accountable, my guest is Lindsay Andiola, who is an accounting professor at VCU. Lindsay, thanks so much for being on Accountable.
I'm excited to be here and talk about this.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
I mean, this is a subject that you're passionate about, obviously. I mean, accounting education, getting folks ready to jump out in the business world and so let me ask you this. I mean, because I think that the industry as a whole, a common phrase that I hear a lot when we're talking about kind of accounting education and kind of that transition from student to working and kind of being in accounting positions, auditing positions, is that the role of the accountant is widening. I think Barry Melancone from the AI CPA said something along those lines a couple of years ago, and meaning that companies are asking for more from their accountants. They're asking more from their accounting departments, and they're not sort of just being involved in the traditional finance areas. Would you agree that the role of the accountant is kind of widening, that the skill set that's being wanted by companies is widening?
I think I would say that the skill set of graduating is evolving,
Okay.
and maybe in a sense it is widening, but there's definitely and I think this is in a good way, and I
Right.
say this to my students all the time that you think of the old school accountant, or that picture that so many people get in their heads of what an accountant looks like when you say you're an accountant. And and a lot of people kind of associate that with boring.
Yeah.
I've heard that before. Why did you get into accounting, or why do you do that? And I say to my students now, I like the field that they are getting into is such an evolving and rapidly changing field. The skills that they need now to evolve with it are key. Just in thinking about like that. Obviously, data analytics has become such an important kind of piece to what accountants do. But I think it's with the why. Well, why is it so important? Well, it's important because what accountants are doing now isn't just bookkeeping anymore. They need to be able to analyze the data, and they don't necessarily need to be able to know all the ins and outs of how to clean the data or how to the background pieces. But
Right.
they need to be able to have the accounting knowledge to then pull in pieces of data from other sources, whether that's internally within their organization or externally, outside of the organization with industry information, to then be able to say something about, well, where should the company go, or what areas should we look at in an audit? And that's a skill set that people didn't know accountants could even do, I think, before. And now, with an accountant's knowledge of data and how accounting information works, and they have that ability if they have the skill set to do it. And so it's not only kind of the data analytics, but to me, writing and communicating effectively and efficiently this information has just become more important. I think, accountants, there was this long time where it was like, well, you just do the accounting, but
Right.
these skill sets really, they now are sought after if you have all of them. That's not to say that you maybe don't still have some of the typical accountants, but if you're one of those accountants that are going to be sought after, it's this combined set of skills: the accounting, data analytics, and ability to communicate. Those are the people that really transform what we're doing right now.
I think I want to bring out a couple of things because you said some really interesting things there. I think the word that kept coming up in that conversation, in what you just said there, is information. So it's not just necessarily debits on the left, credits on the right anymore, and that's
Right.
kind of it. We're looking to our CPAs, to our accounting departments, to our auditors, and folks that are going into the accounting industry as being information sources.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I think what you said there, I think what I heard you say is that it's not just about sort of gathering the information, it's about making sense out of it.
Right. Yes. I think that is, it's such a key piece of this now is making sense of the information and not just the accounting information. Having an ability to combine the information that an accountant is comfortable with other pieces of information that can be beneficial, and then to be able to translate that to the people who need it, whether that's communicating it to a CEO or, communicating it to an internal audit group. It's those two components together that have just become very important to be, successful in accounting. But it's also where you can be creative and innovative,
Sure.
and have a lot more value to your organization. So, and I think for an accountant, that also provides just a lot more benefit to, enjoyment of the career. So, I think that the way that things are changing are good for people who, have that in them, that want to go, down that path.
Accountants being creative, Lindsay? Come on. Really? No, I'm just kidding.
In a good way.
Absolutely.
Way.
No,
Innovating.
all of you out there in accountable land, you know that I'm kidding around here. I mean, seriously, I mean, so I think what you're saying, though, is that it's that interpretation step that is really, I mean, kind of what keeps the accounting profession in demand. It's that ability to sort of analyze data, to be able to work with that data, and to be able to interpret it. That second part, I think, is really key to what you said.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what maybe some of the things that VCU has done. I mean, I think you said that the industry has evolved. My understanding is that VCU's done a lot in the last few years to kind of try to evolve along with the profession itself. Could you maybe just touch on some of the initiatives and some of the projects that have been happening at VCU?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a multi-part piece to this, right? In the sense that the accounting department, it was obvious that data analytics was becoming a more critical component to accountants, and how could we incorporate that into the curriculum? So one of the kind of just the big curriculum change is that we now require an accounting data analytics course as kind of one of the senior level courses. So that was one component of it. But then there's also the need to kind of build up to that, right?
Right.
Just throwing it in at the end isn't necessarily helpful, because developing kind of a mindset of interpreting and understanding data, and a willingness to kind of to do that. It can't be formed in one class. So, we've really started from like our intermediate accounting 1, and trying to build in pieces of skill sets in Excel and analytics and Tableau, moving into like our accounting information systems. And then my audit class has, a couple of group assignments and things that we do in class to highlight even further these components. So as a result, it's by the time they're in, my class or that accounting data analytics class, which tend to be the last two classes that they have, they've been building their confidence towards this point and feel more comfortable with it. And so to me, I think that that's a critical piece of this. Just throwing in, one class or two classes mixed in, it's the combination, and not just, I think to some extent we have a great business school, and a lot of, these universities have a great business school where they have external, data analytics through other departments, through either their IS. But I think it is also important it needs to be embedded somehow into the accounting curriculum so that they can understand how these things work together from an accounting perspective, not just from an information systems perspective or, a broader business perspective. How will you use this in accounting? And so I think, that's really been our big push I joined 6 years ago. And since I got here, that's really been something that I've been focused on, and our department has been focused on building into the curriculum.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, so it's a constant build. So it's not just like, hey, we're going to tack on this class at the end. Here, learn data analytics. It's sort of a purposeful direction that you're kind of building. And then the capstone of it is that we sort of have this kind of accounting data analytics course. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think like from my perspective now, when my students hit audit and they have to do a data analytics for audit in Tableau and work with it, and compared to the first time I ran this, four-ish years ago, I don't know, give or take 5 semesters ago, there were a lot of wide eyes of like, oh my gosh, I don't know, I don't want to touch this, I don't like Tableau. You could just feel the insecurity of the students going into working with that type of, project. And I feel like when I mention it in class, this semester, there's head nodding. Oh yeah, okay, we're doing. They know that it's coming. They've had some contact with it in various classes already, and so it doesn't feel so just huge to then take on a project of that nature. And to me, that's what's key is just a willingness to learn something and not be afraid of it. And I think that's an important part of kind of the undergrad curriculum. From my perspective, is just building that, confidence to go down that path.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you too, I mean, as a lot of the listeners know, I mean, I teach and I speak all over the country doing a lot of CPE courses for accountants, and some of the data analytics courses that are out there that the AI CPA, Surgent, Kaplan, all those folks that they put out tend to be some of the most well attended, because I think accountants across the industry know that this is what's being expected of them. I mean, this is the kind of the next step for them. And to, I think, your point, I mean, previous to this, I mean, if you've been, out of school for a while, I think some CPAs feel kind of under-equipped in that area.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no different than kind of the process of when we moved from paper work papers and audit to electronic work papers. I was on the cusp of when that happened, and that was a huge, kind of milestone. And I remember sometimes you'd work with a partner who would say, "Can you just print that for me?" Because they didn't feel equipped to do a review in electronic form. Well, we are miles past that now, but it's the same. I think it's the same idea, right? It is going to be the staff and the lower level that are going to take this up. But absolutely, the CEOs, the CFOs, the partners need to have enough familiarity with this to help, connect the dots, because they still have the expertise that, the staff and managers need they need to ask the question, and then the staff need to figure out, well, how can I answer this question using this data? And I think that's really a key link for them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Let me ask you this. I occasionally, when I'm out and I'm talking to, CFOs and vice presidents of finance and things like that in conferences, I think there is maybe a little bit of skepticism on sort of how much you can really teach from a sort of technology, data analytics end of things, because they sort of look at data as sort of being company specific, and they sort of say, okay, well, how much can you really teach in a data analytics course when data is kind of very company specific, and the types of data that come out of a particular company is kind of company specific. And I guess I would maybe ask you that. I mean, how do you sort of prepare students for kind of company by company differences, or can you? Is it just kind of more about sort of laying the groundwork?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different softwares and technologies and ways of analyzing data, from Power BI to Tableau to Caseware Idea to things that I don't even know about yet that have come out. And so I think from a instructor's perspective, that's a challenge, right? Because we can't possibly teach all these different softwares and technologies, and every different, audit firm that I speak to is using a different one, or they're using a proprietary one that I can't even see. Right. I think it just comes back to that there's certain skills around an ability to analyze data. Can you ask the question, determine what pieces of information you need to answer that question, and then the software itself, I don't see as that big of a deal there, in the sense that if you're comfortable with the pieces of how to get to the end result, then the software can be taught. It can be trained. I mean, Tableau has a billion free trainings that you can do. I mean, I've used them when I've had questions with my students in class, and I can figure it out. So to me, I'm trying to teach the students that you can figure it out. That the technology itself, I'm not so bothered by which one they use. I'm bothered by them understanding the components that they need to get to the question they want to answer. Because the middle piece, the software, is that's the easy part in my mind. It should be the easy part. I don't think it's always been that way. Software used to be extremely clunky. It was hard to use. It wasn't as user friendly. But nowadays, so many of the things are point and click, and that you can figure it out as long as you feel confident that you can figure it out and you have at your disposal some trainings to get you there. So obviously if you're going to a much more advanced place with, as a data scientist, then your skill set is going to change. But for a typical accountant in kind of the types of questions that they would need to answer, I think that there's a base kind of skill set that they need to do that. And that I think is what really the focus of curriculums should be, is that base skill set. And that then can be applied to different softwares.
Right. Kind of a related thing that I occasionally hear from firms where I'm going in and I'm teaching. Sometimes I think that they feel that the colleges and universities are kind of teaching more theory rather than sort of like the nuts and bolts that that students coming out of school, new hires, that they really need. So so I remember one time a partner stepping into a conference with me and he being very frustrated, saying he's like all my new hires, they know all this theory, but they don't know how to enter in a journal entry, and I'm not sure if that's a new phenomenon or not. I seem to remember something similar happening when I was getting started in my career too. I guess my question is what's kind of how do folks within universities and colleges, or at the very least, I guess just VCU, how do they look at kind of that transition? Is the goal of kind of the accounting education process, is it to just kind of lay the foundation, lay the theory in, and let the firms kind of fill in the nuts and bolts details, or is there some sort of an intersection there? I think that it's probably something that some of our CFO friends that are listening now, I think that they'd be curious about that. Where's sort of the line there?
I think ideally there is a balance. I came from practice. I worked at a Big Four. I worked in private equity before I came back to be to get my PhD and become an instructor. And so I think I come from that place in terms of my class of knowing where the students have to be when they get out. And that's really helpful, right? But not everyone necessarily has those connections, and so I think there can be a struggle with that if students don't if instructors don't have that practical component to base their teaching on, which I think it has shifted a lot. I
agree with
now,
that.
There are more instructors were in practice some form of accounting before they then went back and got their PhD or their adjuncts, or they've retired and they've come back. I think the diversity in faculty, I think, has shifted and for the better in terms of maybe trying to make more of a link between theory and practice. Across VCU and especially in the business school, there's been this big push for EPIC and experiential learning.
Right.
And that's really it's that piece of it is about connecting, the more technical knowledge, theory piece of accounting or business to what actually happens when you get out the door into the field. And, I think a lot of universities have realized the importance of kind of making those connections. And that's also from an accounting perspective, I think kind of what the CPA exam has tried to work itself a little bit more too, this idea of having to apply concepts more so than just what they used to kind of say, well, it's just a memorization activity. The CPA exam was a lot of memorization. And now, they're working towards trying to, make students that are taking those exams or, recently graduated students to apply concepts, to evaluate information. And that's the connection between the theory, right, and practice is that taking a concept and then applying it into a new setting. And so, I think broadly speaking, that when I talk to my colleagues at other universities, they're working towards this. Right. I came out of the ADS, the Accounting Doctoral Scholars Program that the AICPA put on.
Right.
And so a lot of my colleagues fell into the same bucket. They either came from audit or they came from tax. And so there's a lot more of the practitioners that are back in universities, I think, pushing these concepts, down into the curriculum that we viewed as valuable, once we were out. So I think that program has been hugely beneficial kind of across universities to get practitioners back into classrooms on a regular basis to help connect that, that kind of gap that maybe was happening over the years.
And just for our listeners that are out there that aren't really familiar with some of these things, I mean, something that's very interesting right now is the CPA exam is evolving. To Lindsay's point, there has been very purposeful efforts to evolve the exam to being something that is not just sort of a memorization type of an exam, not necessarily sort of a strictly finance type of an exam, because the feeling, I think, in general is that the profession has changed, and the profession, like we're talking about today, is not it's not the same profession. It's about information, and it's about data gathering and things like that. And the exam has evolved towards that. Another thing that you pointed out too, is the AICPA has tried to get practitioners back into the classroom, and that is a program that they are currently working on, and I think that they've done a good job of trying to do that, because the AICPA too. I mean, it's a practitioner, organization. I mean, they're supposed to be kind of the voice of the profession, and so so they're trying to sort of fill that need too. So I think that's very true. So it sounds to me like like the CPA exam is still something that's helping to shape some of the programs at VCU. I mean, is that fair to say? I mean, is that kind of evolution, happened as well as the exam has evolved? VCU's evolved towards the exam too.
I think somewhat. Certainly, with the audit course, it's kind of at its very nature so connected to, and I am dealing with mostly seniors who are about to go through the process, and so I definitely make a pretty strong connection. But my class has such a good fit with that. Whereas, a lot of kind of what the CPA exam covers is spread across, a number of our classes. And so I don't know if, like the intermediate 1, 2, and 3 are not as interconnected to the CPA exam, I think, as a course like mine is. I think it depends. It's certainly in terms of what most state societies are requiring for accounting classes, and we are covering those buckets, right? So so that they are guaranteed to have the appropriate classes they're supposed to have in order to head towards the CPA. That I think that is the goal.
Well, this is kind of interesting to me. One of the things that the AICPA has been dealing with at the national level, not so much in Virginia though, just to be clear to our listeners, but there's been a drop in the number of people taking the CPA exam nationally. Okay, now in Virginia we haven't experienced it as much. There's been it's been a slight drop, but not nearly the case though. Nationally, there's been a little bit of a drop in candidates wanting to take the CPA exam. I guess I would just be curious as to, obviously, I think it sounds like the CPA exam is still, important to you. Is it something that, the colleges and universities, do you think that they're still, pushing students to, encouraging students to take the CPA exam? Or is it kind of one of those things where it's like, well, take it if you can, but,
Yeah, I thought about, in terms of this, it's interesting that it's dropped, but I'm not necessarily completely shocked. It kind of from a couple of perspectives. One is I think that we, as CPAs, we've maybe to some extent kind of taken for granted that students just know that it's that there's prestige in getting your CPA.
Right.
I get the sense that especially at kind of the lower, the accounting 100, the full gamut of students who are in the School of Business, that they don't have a sense of that. And even in maybe the intermediate accounting, that there's less certainty that is the direction that they're supposed to take. And I don't know what the underlying reason is for that, because to me, these badging and certification kind of concepts have become widely popular, like on LinkedIn and Microsoft, and they're widely popular, particularly with the students or the recent graduates. This, getting certified in Excel or getting certified in Tableau, and they like that. They like having those badges. So I feel like there's this missing opportunity that we're not kind of properly maybe connecting the CPA badge for the students or for this younger generation. That maybe that they're just. We collectively need to do a better job of expressing the value, making them understand, why this is beneficial. And I definitely, express this in my audit class. But at that point, a lot of students have decided mentally whether they were on the path or not. And so at that point, trying to convince someone otherwise, it can sometimes be hard. The maybes, but the people who say no, I just want to go into corporate accounting. I say, are you sure? There's nothing wrong with that. But, just in the sense of where, what the CPA provides to someone in terms of getting your foot in the door, making sure your resume gets looked at, the long-term value in terms of actual money that CPAs make over another person who basically had the same career and never got their CPA. I think that for this younger generation, that we as the CPA, AICPA, greater bodies of people need to make this just more clear to them as to why, because I think if they can understand the value, then they will go through the process. But I don't know. I wonder if we've just taken it for granted too much, that if you go into accounting, that you're going to get your CPA and that's what you're supposed to do. And I don't think that this generation necessarily thinks like that, that they need a little bit more convincing.
Well, and I think that that's a great point. I would also point out, too, that one of the things that I think I pointed out in one of the ethics class that I did a few years ago is I think I read a study that there was something like 300 or 400 financial designations in the United States alone. So, so we've kind of gone a little bit designation crazy. I think that that's fair to say. However, I would also say, though, too, to folks that maybe are listening, that maybe are undecided about, taking the CPA exam, or to people who are listening who maybe have their CPA and aren't sure about its importance. I think if you were to ask the average person on the street, they would not necessarily know what a lot of other financial designations are. But I think that the CPA, still carries some weight. And I think that if you ask people now, they may not necessarily always know exactly what that designation means. Like, the sort of the classic, thing that I hear, especially from a lot of folks that are in auditing, is, they'll say that they're a CPA, and then they'll get the person's going to ask them a tax question, like right away. Right. But I
still
do
get
think
that question, and I'm not even in practice. My husband gets that question. I mean, my mom still asks him about the busy time of the year. Sorry, my husband is an accountant and he works in corporate. I'm like, no, it does not revolve around tax season. Like, that's not his busy time.
Yeah. I mean, and so I do think you see some of that. But I would also point out, though, too, I think that when people generally think of CPA, even today, even in, as we're doing this, I still think that they think financial expert. I mean, they think of that expertise and that prestige and that objectivity, that's kind of the cornerstone, I think, of our profession is, it's that kind of important piece.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think, in a down market, if, a person has 100 resumes on their desk and they're flipping through them. They're just, the initial cut will be, okay, CPA, check, puts in the pile to look at that one. CPA, no, put it in that pile. Because if you have, a large amount of resumes you're trying to go through, that is a thing that anyone would recognize and say, okay, that one takes another look. I did that, when I would look at resumes when I was in practice, and that when you got a lot, that was the first thing that would just separate the field, for a position. Definitely still has value.
I mean, because what I hear you saying is it pushes your resume to the top. So, I mean, there is still this, sense that, it's an important designation. And I guess just because of the prestige and just because of the history behind the CPA exam, too, I think that helps. It's a financial designation that's been around for a very long time. And so, people know what it is. You seem like, I know that you're somebody who's, passionate about kind of helping your students sort of keep their hands kind of in the industry and feeling very connected with the industry. How do you kind of keep your hand on the pulse of kind of what's going on in the industry? Are there things that you do? Do you talk to firms in the area, or things like that? Or how do you sort of stay sort of connected to the industry itself?
Number one is being connected with the practitioners that are here in Richmond, that hire our students, right? So, sure. I mean, they obviously have a particular perspective on that. We're actually in the process of developing an accounting advisory board for our department with kind of this specific purpose, that we have, a couple of regular meetings every year where we can bounce, ideas off of practitioners and understand what's going on in practice. And a lot of universities have those already. So, I think that's, one mechanism to do it. As an academic, there are other kind of opportunities that we have in terms of, conferences that, they're often research-based, but inevitably, like the American Accounting Association has a number of panels that are about issues going on in practice, whether that's, a number of audit firms or, tax-related people, or the AICPA will come in and talk about, changes to the CPA exam. So I tend to attend those when I'm at those conferences, because those are the pieces that I don't get anywhere else. That's kind of broad perspectives.
Right.
And, I read a ton, whether, the practitioner journals. I'm always curious what, the Journal of Accountancy is putting out. But like the Harvard Business Review too, just from like a broader perspective of, things that are going on broadly in organizations, often applied specifically to the accounting profession. And so I think some of those, types of kind of skirt the line between academic research, but practitioner types of journals can be really helpful to get kind of new ideas about things that are going on, or things that are cutting edge from that perspective. And they tend to be pretty neutral in terms of political directions or anything of that nature.
Right. Yeah. I think that's great. I too, read a lot of those things too. I think it's really interesting. Some of the things, especially if you pick up a copy of the Journal of Accountancy. I mean, that's, talking about a lot of the things that are going on, that we've talked about today, data, technology, and kind of how all of those things are kind of becoming a more ingrained part of our industry, no doubt about that. So,
yeah.
If folks want to learn more about what VCU is doing, or what some of the things that you're up to, how would they go about doing that?
Email probably is the easiest and quickest and most efficient way to get in touch with me. So the faculty page of our School of Accountancy has all of my contact information. It does also include a phone number, but as I said, email is probably the quickest way to get in touch with me. There's also a website link there that has kind of specific information about me and research that I've been currently working on, and teaching cases that my students have been working on. So it's another place to just find more information for sure.
So, folks, there you have it. Okay, I mean, if you want to know kind of what's going on, in the universities, especially at VCU, I can tell you this is a peek behind the curtain to all of you listeners. I'm a VCU guy. Okay, so I got my MBA at VCU. So, I'm definitely a supporter of everything that they're doing. I'm excited about a lot of the things that VCU is doing, and so you guys should check it out. If you're listening to this podcast, check it out, and check out what Lindsay's up to, and kind of all of the research and all the things that the faculty are doing there. It's exciting stuff, and for me, as you can probably tell, I get charged up. So anyway, well. Thank you so much for being here, Lindsay. I greatly appreciate it, and
thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was nice to talk to you and just get out some of the information about things that are changing in the accounting profession.
Thanks for listening to Accountable. Be sure to subscribe for more interviews and insights from today's business leaders. David Peters is a registered representative offering securities through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Carroll Financial Associates, a registered investment advisor. Peters Tax Preparation, David Peters Financial, Carroll Financial, and Cetera Advisor Networks are not affiliated. He is located at 1657 West Broad Street, Unit 5, Richmond, Virginia, 23220, and can be reached at 804-332-1373. The views depicted in this material are for information purposes only and not necessarily those of Cetera. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual.